you sign, they're going to pull them right off. You can't have anything on any kind of a structure. You need a permit from the city to put any kind of a structure up, guys.
Okay. Plus, those things are probably hundreds of years old.
They absolutely are, and they are very historic.
All right, we've got the wind in it.
All right, people, let's fold it up. All right.
You gotta get closer to me here.
Yes. Are you good? Fight the power.
Oh yeah, I'm going down. Ready?
I slowed it down a little.
Yes, closer.
To the point. Yes.
No hate! No lies! Trump's running out of time! No hate! No lies! Trump's running out of time! No hate! No lies! Trump's running out of time! No hate! No lies! Trump's running out of time! No hate! No lies! This is what democracy looks like. Donald Trump has got to go. Hey, hey, ho, ho. Donald Trump has got to go. Hey, hey, ho, ho. Donald Trump has got to go. Hey, hey, ho, ho. Donald Trump has got to go. Hey, hey, ho, ho. Donald Trump has got to go. Hey, hey, ho, ho. Donald Trump has got to go. Hey, hey, ho, ho. Donald Trump has got to go. Hey, hey.
I just made it up on the way here. You ready?
Yes.
Impeach! Impeach! This president is a leech! 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 All right, good job. Good job.
You were fired from Hometown Trolley Tours. For what? What did you do?
I can't talk now.
Oh,
I'm one of the organizers. But it's nice to see you after all these
You're
years.
treasonous.
The president is
You are
treasonous.
anti-American. He's your president. He's going to be your president for the next 4 years.
You and
Have a
I,
wonderful night.
I appreciate you. We are fellow Americans.
Yes, we are.
United in patriotism.
Absolutely.
And we're here on behalf to save our
You're here
democracy.
for Trump derangement syndrome. That's why you're here.
I disagree, but you are entitled to your opinion. And I'm just happy to see you. It's nice.
See you too.
Old Town Trolley is a great company. I
is.
still have
A lot of history.
absolutely.
A lot of history.
Tell your name again.
Joseph Warren.
Joseph, thanks for being here. God bless you.
God bless you
And,
too.
I
I hope you
to my
I
fellow
hope you get
Americans.
over your derangement syndrome.
Hey, how are you? Oh, I'm
Do you know where he did any of these things, or just
Yeah, bribery.
Where?
Treason.
where is it? Where's your evidence?
Bribery.
Yeah, where is it?
Bribery is extortion.
What did he bribe?
Ukraine.
Price for what?
That's one.
What are you talking about?
For citizen
80s? What did he do? What was his bribery?
Article 2.
What was the bribery? 5 more years.
You know what the bribery was? It was that we, as a country, had agreed to supply them with security And after that, Trump kind of pulled it back and said, wait a minute, not until you do a few more things.
No, he didn't. He said,
Yeah, that's what he
no,
said.
he didn't. That money, everybody says that money went out where it should have went out.
Not
Everybody
really.
says that.
Actually, no, that's not true.
It
You
is.
need to watch the
An
witnesses.
independent
You need to watch the
independent group.
witnesses. The independent group.
An independent group said the money came out sooner than it should have came out. That's exactly what they said. There wasn't bribery.
Believe this independent group?
I do, yeah.
I don't know who the
They're mostly Democrats.
interesting. Because what I did was I watched the hearings with the witnesses.
Today we stand with you and hundreds of thousands of other people at 600 rallies to call for President Trump's impeachment and removal. This is not an act of partisanship. It is an act of patriotism. We must hold our president to the same standard that we hold every other politician and every other president, because nobody is above the law.
Nobody.
Let's say that. Nobody is above the law. In fact, President Trump's wrongdoing doesn't just include the articles of impeachment about extorting Ukraine or stonewalling Congress. It goes much beyond that. He has used his power by interfering with a Russia investigation. He attacks the free press when they cover him fairly. He violated multiple campaign finance laws and failed his oath of office by refusing to safeguard our elections. He's used his office for personal gain and normalized racism and xenophobia. So tonight, let's ensure this does not endure.
Lock him up! Lock him up!
Lock him up! Lock him up! Lock him up! Lock him up! Lock him up!
Our nation's darkest moments have been followed by great triumphs. After Watergate, the people came together and demanded reform. Today, we can do that as well. We must bring the power back to the people. We must protect our elections. We must protect our democracy. And we must impeach and remove President Donald J. Trump. Impeach! Remove!
Impeach! Remove! Impeach! Remove! Impeach! Remove! Impeach! Remove! Impeach! Remove! Impeach!
House rule as well, William Weld. I had the honor of working with Governor Weld on a number of good government initiatives back in the day. And before that, he served as the U.S. prosecutor and prosecuted a number of public corruption crimes. And he also served on the staff of the Judiciary Committee during the Watergate era. So he knows of what he speaks. Governor Weld, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for your work.
So thank you everybody for coming. This is a moment of national crisis. I think it's not too dramatic to exclaim. I would like to start by simply pointing out that Donald Trump has shown himself over the course of the last 3 years of being a traitor to American democracy and to the American people. He has declared war on a free press, declaring that a free press is the enemy of the people. In fact, as we all know, a free press is a bulwark of democracy and a protection for the people. He has declared war on independent judiciary, declaring it's the enemy of the people. The independent judiciary is one of the last safeguards of the people to their democratic institutions. He's lied to us on a daily basis. He has endeavored to hollow out, with some success, the Departments of State, Homeland Security, and Defense so as to arrogate their functions to himself. I've had 3 stints in Washington, and I can tell you, if you're testifying before a committee of Congress and you have the word acting in front of your title, you have 0 clout.
That's right.
And that's all on purpose by Mr. Trump. He knows very well what's going to happen. So he set out to dismantle institution after institution, and believe me, I'm something of an expert, having written a memorandum about what constitutes grounds for impeachment and removal for the Nixon impeachment in 1974. This man richly deserves to be impeached and removed from office. He is going to be a loser in the 2020 election, no matter what happens. I know Mr. Trump likes the word loser, so I have no trouble affixing it to his derriere. So this is no time for us to bend our necks to the yoke. This is a time for action by all of us. And I mean concerted action, just as Pam Wilmot has proposed. So we must let nothing interfere with our shared goal, which is as follows. Hasta la vista, Trump! 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 Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you.
Impeachment for the Ukraine scandal. He deserves impeachment for other reasons too. Much of his wrongdoing was legal. Here's what you may have missed. Trump has been rolling back environmental regulations that protect us from air pollution and hazardous chemicals. He repealed the Clean Water Rule and replaced the Clean Power Plan with a weaker version. He called for more drilling in national parks, announced plans for drilling in nearly all U.S. waters, and completed plans to begin drilling in the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. He directed a plan that will open nearly 10 million acres of the Tongass National Forest for mining and logging projects. He appointed Scott Pruitt to the head of the EPA. This is a guy conduct, Trump appointed Andrew Wheeler to replace him, a guy who got paid hundreds of thousands of dollars by the coal industry. Trump also cut the EPA budget by a third, crippling its ability to complete toxic waste cleanup. In his ongoing campaign to reverse the achievements of his predecessor, Trump has been working to increase our dependence on fossil fuels. He reversed fuel efficiency and emission standards and cut funding for NASA's carbon monitoring system. He cut funding for the Endangered Species Act, the same law that allowed the bald eagle to make a comeback. And last but not least, he withdrew the United States from the Paris Climate Agreement. Out of 197 countries, we're the only ones who pulled out of this promise.
That is so sad.
According to a Yale survey, 7 out of 10 Americans disagree with this decision. Make the presidency great again. Make nature great again.
Hello, Boston. I'm Ron Fine. I'm the legal director of Free Speech for People, and I'm here for a night that we've been looking forward to since January 20th, 2017. Now, I don't want to talk about Trump right now. I want to talk about you, because you have the grit to come out and stand here on a cold, rainy night for one purpose and one purpose only, which is to say enough. When Donald Trump cheated in the 2016 election by soliciting foreign involvement, paying hush money to silence his mistresses, you said enough. Enough! When Donald Trump entered office with his businesses continuing to pocket payments from foreign powers and to gorge himself at the trough of the taxpayers, you said enough! And when Donald Trump came into office directing the Justice Department, the FBI, and even the Postal Service to investigate and harass his enemies list, you said enough! And when Donald Trump used his office to promote racism and violence and discrimination and hostility amongst our fellow Americans, you said enough! And when Donald Trump misused the armed forces and abused the presidential emergency powers, whether at the southern border with Mexico or by using the army in Yemen even after Congress told him not to, you said enough! And when Donald Trump persisted in ripping children away from their families, you said enough! Now, look back on this night. Years from now, when the story of America is told, someone will ask you, maybe someone who hasn't even been born yet, they'll say, what did you do? And you will have a memory of this cold, rainy night in Boston Common. And you'll be able to say, I showed up, I stood up, I spoke up, and I said, enough! I would like to introduce now Ben Clements, former Chief Counsel to Governor Deval Patrick and the Chair of the Board of Directors of Free Speech for People.
Thank you, Ron. Hello, everybody. Happy Impeachment Day. So great to have you out here on this beautiful winter night in Boston. We are way overdue, but this time has come. It is time for impeachment in the House of Representatives. And this Ukraine extortion scheme and cover-up is unbelievably lawless. It is an overwhelming case for impeachment. If it stood by itself, if it were the whole story, if this were otherwise a legitimate president, which it is not, Congress would have no choice but to impeach. But it's not the whole story, and it's up to us. It's up to us to remind the country and to remind our representatives in Congress that this is far from the only reason that Donald Trump needs to be impeached and removed. Donald Trump does not do anything for the good of this country and its people. Donald Trump's narcissistic mind can't even understand that concept. His actions are driven by the only interests that he understands and that he can measure. His personal financial interests, his personal and narrow political interests, and satisfying his delicate and needy ego. Donald Trump is the most illegitimate and unfit president in our country's history. He secured the office with the illegal assistance of the Russian government, with the assistance of an illegal hush money scheme that he personally directed and covered up. And since taking office, not a day has gone by where he has not committed more impeachable offenses. He's violating the constitutional emolument clauses on a massive scale, turning the presidency into his personal piggy bank. He's engaged in an endless stream of obstruction of justice from the first weeks of his administration, continuing to today. And he is engaged in a systematic effort to deny our people of the equal protection of the laws, to undermine our constitutional rights, to promote white nationalism and bigotry and violence, using the unlawful threat of prosecution and investigation and the power of the presidency to intimidate his enemies, to intimidate any politician, any public official, any member of the media who will speak out and tell the truth about him, and to discourage government officials and others from testifying truthfully about him. And he has turned the once proud and independent office of the Attorney General into his personal mob lawyer in the thoroughly corrupted Bill Barr. A man who has come to understand his only mission is to cover up the misdeeds of Donald Trump and attack and investigate with bogus investigations Trump's political and personal enemies. And let's be clear about one thing. All of this will continue. These offenses will continue, and they will escalate until he is impeached and removed. But I want to ask you, and I'm going to wrap up quickly, but I want us to remember something else. This is not just about Donald Trump. It's about us. It's about all of us as Americans and what kind of country we want to live in. The framers of our Constitution were not perfect people, and they gave us a work in progress in our Constitution. But they put some incredibly important principles in there, and one of the most important was that the government works for the people and not the other way around. And that no government official, especially the President of the United States, is above the law. Those framers could scarcely have conceived of a character as morally bankrupt, as pathologically mendacious, and as venally corrupt as Donald Trump. And yet, in the most important ways, he's exactly the kind of person they had in mind when they gave us the impeachment clause. Someone who's beholden to foreign governments, someone who's beholden to his own financial interests, and someone like the monarchs in Britain from whom they declared their independence believe that he is above the law. And the longer this goes on, the longer he remains in office, the greater the threat to our constitutional democracy and the greater the threat to our national security. We can't wait anymore. Donald Trump must be impeached and he must be removed. And until that happens, and to make that happen, we need to stand up to his enablers. We need to stand up to his corrupt enablers in the House, his corrupt enablers in the Senate, his corrupt enablers in his beholden Department of Justice, and to those in the establishment media who are so easily intimidated that they play along. We need to stand up and make clear to all of them that we cannot and we will not tolerate a racist, corrupt, lawless, unfit, misogynist, bigoted, xenophobic president trampling. We will not stand for that kind of person trampling on our Constitution and trampling on our people. So it's way past time, people. Say it loudly, say it proudly. Impeach and remove! Impeach and remove! Thank you.
Impeach and remove! 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 Impeach and
Good evening. My name is Carol Rose. I'm the Executive Director of the ACLU of Massachusetts. Millions of ACLU members in Massachusetts and across this country. I'm here to stand proudly with our allies and with all of you to say that Donald Trump must be impeached. Now, the ACLU, like Common Cause, is a nonpartisan organization. But when Donald Trump campaigned and stole an election and got into power on a campaign of violating people's civil rights and civil liberties, the ACLU said, "We'll see you in court." And we have filed hundreds of lawsuits, stopping him in every move, separating children and their families at the border, taking away women's reproductive choice and freedom, violating free speech rights and freedom of the press, and basically abusing his power at every turn. But now, even the ACLU and all of you have to go one step further. It's not enough to see him in the courts. Now we need to see him in Congress. Because what he has done is not only manipulate the 2016 election, he's attempting to steal the 2020 election, and that's a violation not just of the Constitution, it's a direct attack on voting rights. There is no more grave and imminent threat to civil liberties or to our democracy than stealing an election. And we know he won't stop. Just last week he met with Russian Sergei Lavrov to talk about election manipulation. The question is, were they talking about ways to stop it or ways to commit it? I believe they were talking about ways to commit it. He has said nothing will stop him except impeachment. And this is precisely what the founders created the articles of impeachment for, to stop someone who thinks that they're above the law. Because I came and I saw, and no one is above the law.
No one is above the law!
I came, I saw, and no one is above the law. I came,
I saw, and no one is above the law. I came, I saw, and no one is above the law. I came, I saw, and no one is above the law.
Thank you very much.
We will see you here before the Senate votes. We will see you here before the Senate votes.
So we can all have happy life. I'm this sign to show what I'm doing.
And what does it say?
It says this is what democracy looks like.
Treason! Bribery!
Bribery!
Other high crimes and misdemeanors!
Other high crimes and misdemeanors!
Like crimes against humanity! Like crimes against humanity!
And I was trying to minimize the walking in the rain because I knew we could stand
All right, ladies, I am going to go left. You are going to go right.
Happy holidays!
I came all the way from home.
Join up with the Out Now movement. Only the people in the streets can force the removal of Trump and Pence. If you listen to Nancy Pelosi, she's actually admitting they don't have the votes to remove him. They're voting for impeachment, but they don't have the votes to remove him. And this is where the people need to take to the streets. And Nancy Pelosi is afraid to call us into the streets. This one-time rally is not enough. We need to do what they're doing in Hong Kong.
First, if you could spell your first and last name.
Directing current and former executive branch officials not to cooperate with the committees, in response to which 9 administration officials defied subpoenas for testimony. Namely, Mick Mulvaney, Robert B. Blair, John A. Eisenberg, Michael Ellis, Preston Wells Griffin, Russell T. Voigt, Michael Duffy, Ryan McCormick, and T. Ulrich Breckenball. These actions were consistent with President Trump's previous efforts to undermine the United States government investigations into foreign interference in the United States elections, like Russia.
He's a Russian puppet!
Through these actions, President Trump sought to arrogate to himself the right to determine the propriety, scope, and nature of an impeachment inquiry into his own conduct, as well as the unilateral prerogative to deny any and all information to the House of Representatives in the exercise of its sole power of impeachment. In the history of the Republic, no president has ever ordered the complete defiance of an impeachment inquiry.
Shame!
Or sought to obstruct and impede so comprehensively the ability of the House of Representatives to investigate high crimes and misdemeanors. This abuse of office served to cover the president's own repeated misconduct and to seize and control the power of impeachment, and thus to nullify a vital constitutional safeguard vested solely in the House of Representatives. In all this, President Trump has acted in a manner contrary to his trust as president and subversive of constitutional government, to the great prejudice of the cause of law and justice and the manifest injury of the people of the United States. Wherefore, President Trump, by such conduct, has demonstrated that he will remain a threat to the Constitution if allowed to remain in office. Correct! And has acted in a manner grossly incompatible with self-government and the rule of law. President Trump thus warrants impeachment and trial, removal from office, and disqualification to hold and enjoy any office of honor, trust, or profit under the United States. Yes. How do we vote on this article of impeachment? Yes. Yes. Impeach and remove! Impeach and remove! Impeach and remove!
Impeach and remove! Impeach and remove! Impeach and remove! Impeach and remove!
If anybody wants a copy, it has the numbers of all your representatives. Come see me. And senators.
What if we try to help you get that in tomorrow?
Please call! It matters!